When looking for the king of podcasts, you're at the wrong channel.
Well, excuse me!
Looking for good ideas for life? You're far from good hands.
Hey, bud, what's your problem?
If you think the listener is always right, you're far from the right place.
Out of order! Even in the future, nothing works!
Hosted by a Northeasterner by birth, but a rebel by choice.
Are you threatening me?
If you want a host that floats between love and madness,
and we know the night is always gonna be here anyway. Thinking of you's working up my appetite. Looking forward to a little afternoon delight.
then play on and listen to Crazy Train Radio.
All right, guys, listen to this blues riff and B. Watch me for the changes and try and keep up, okay?
Warning, creators of this game do understand the subject matter may be offensive to some, but they do honor the families and people that have been affected by these real-life tragedies that these individuals have caused. Want to play a game?
Oh, yeah!
Lover of true crime?
Yes, yes, yes.
Well, we got an interesting game for you to check out.
Wow.
With the mashup of influences such as horror movies, collecting cards, and RPGs.
What?
Led to giving birth to an incredible creation of this game, Killers, the card game.
You are all my children now.
This game is a collectible trading card game featuring some of the most infamous killers, with tidbits of trivia on the back of each card to help you learn some insight to each criminal.
Who the hell are you?
Let's not forget, during the game, cops will be chasing you and these criminals.
I'm a cop, you idiot!
However, check out their website listed through all social media today, which can be found under Killers, the card game.
Am I on the internet?
I want to play a game.
Hi, it's Jackie Kallen, the First Lady of Boxing. And I don't know about you, but I listen to Crazy Train Radio, and so should you. It's a knockout.
Hey folks, it's your least favorite host in the podcast world, Croc, Jonathan Steele. And boy, do we have a good one for you today. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this next guest is certainly a trailblazer, as she has done many firsts in the boxing world. As first, she was a publicist for the great Tommy Hearns of the great fighting city of Detroit, to move on to become the first female boxing manager for folks such as Bobby Hitz, Bronco McKart, and the legendary James Toney. She is going to be inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame this coming June. But let's go ahead and welcome Miss Jackie Kallen. Jackie, how are you? Congratulations. On
Thank you. I'm happy to talk to you.
But congratulations on the induction into the Hall of Fame in June.
I really appreciate that. I'm really honored, and to be the first female boxing manager ever inducted is great, because when you're the first, you're always the first. You know, no one else can ever take that away from you. So I'm really excited about it, and it's a privilege, and I'm just very happy that they selected me. Finally, after 45 years in the business.
Hey, you're still the first though. But, I also have to send congratulations for the same award from a friend of mine who is my boxing guy, Mr. Brian Young, who, when I brought it up, unfortunately he couldn't be here tonight, but he has a mutual friend with you in Mr. James Toney. He's very good friends with James and whatnot. So Brian made sure and put a gun in my head. Make sure you congratulate Jackie for me, which I said.
Tell him thank you so very much. And if it wasn't for James Toney, I doubt that I would be where I am. And we kind of made each other, so to speak. I found him, and he found me at the same time. He needed a manager, and I was there, and it just clicked. And for 6 years, it was magic, and we really accomplished a lot together. And I'm just really proud of all of his accomplishments. And of course, he got in the Hall of Fame a couple years ahead of me, but it's just so great to see him there, and know that now I'll be there with him. And so that'll be our legacy, that we're both in that same International Boxing Hall of Fame together.
Yeah, and the funny part is that Brian had told me is him and James started at the Hall of Fame every year there in New York, a smoking club, because they both are gentlemen that enjoy their cigars.
Oh, yeah. James loves his cigars. I think he has a cigar company now, and he sells his own cigars.
I'll have to ask Brian about that. He never told me that.
Oh, yeah. Ask him about James Toney cigars. Yeah.
He always talks about, them enjoying time sitting and talking, over a cigar every year at the hall and such, telling stories and learning and such. But so I'll have to ask about that when I talk to Brian. But backtrack a few years before the managing deal.
Okay.
The journalism.
That was my background.
You interviewed folks like the Rolling Stones, Sinatra, Elvis, countless others. And for me, that is awesome. Even though I'm only 39, I appreciate that you had a chance to be with Old Blue Eyes, who was another Jersey guy.
Absolutely.
And Elvis.
And Michael Jackson and a lot of other very iconic people that were cultural icons, in the last century. And for me, as a young girl starting out in journalism, to be able to interview people like Elvis and to get close to people like the Rolling Stones, the Beatles. I covered the Beatles at Shea Stadium in New York. I was able to really be part of some very special Bob Dylan concerts, a lot of the early Kiss concerts. I've been friends with people like Frankie Valli and the Beach Boys and some of those early rock and roll bands, Bob Seger, and all the classic rock from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It was really a special time. And for me to cut my journalistic teeth, so to speak, with icons, including presidents and sports legends, the Magic Johnsons and the football and baseball and basketball players, the Barry Bonds and the Ron Duguays and the Wayne Gretzky's and, the greats of all the different sports. I mean, it was just a miracle. So by the time I got into boxing, I already had such a rich background of journalism that it became an easy transition because I started as a boxing writer. I went from entertainment to sports. I still did entertainment, but I added sports to it, to what I did. And boxing just became one of the sports I covered, but it became the sport to me. I just fell in love with boxing and went to work with Tommy Hearns and Manuel Stewart and the Kronk boxing team, which I was lucky enough to live near, being here in Detroit. So I was able to spend 10 years studying boxing with Emmanuel Stewart and Milt McCrory and Hilmer Kenty and all the Kronk fighters. And so I learned so much. Before I ever struck out on my own as a manager, I learned from Emmanuel everything, how to wrap hands, how to stop cuts, how to pick the right fight at the right time for your fighter. what you look for when you sign a fighter. And so much that it was like a college education in boxing. And he was my professor. And may he rest in peace. He was just such a wonderful man to know and to learn from. And by the time I kind of set out on my own path, managing first Bobby Hitz out of Chicago, then James, then Bronco McKart, and Boom Boom Johnson and Pinklin Thomas and so many other fighters, I had that Emmanuel Stewart mindset. You know, he really taught me a lot. And I think I was ahead of the curve because of that. You know, I didn't just come out of the box cold. You know, I had a really good mentor.
Well, you covered a lot of ground there, and you kind of sort of beat me to the punch. Pardon the pun there, since we are talking boxing, as I pour myself a drink. And how did a nice young Jewish girl from Detroit end up at Kronk's gym covering boxing and connect with Tommy Hearns?
It's interesting because I was sent on an assignment to do an interview on this young fighter turning pro out of Detroit who was Tommy Hearns. And I was fascinated by the sport. I think it was more the fact that Tommy Hearns had the meanest look on his face I'd ever seen. His stare at the beginning of the fight was like, I was afraid, and I wasn't even in the ring with him. I was just sitting there ringside, and I looked up, and he had this look on his face like he seriously wanted to hurt this guy. And I thought, oh my gosh, you know, I never saw anybody that angry. What did this guy do to him? I mean, he hates him. And then after the fight, when I went to talk to him, he was like, yes, ma'am, and so sweet. And I went, where is that switch that you go from being this like nasty killer instinct to being this nice, sweet young man? And I wanted to know more about the dichotomy of a person where you can go from one extreme to the other. So I did a story on Tommy, and then I did an interview with Emmanuel. Then I did an interview with Mickey Goodwin, who at that time was his other fighter. He only had 2 fighters at the time. And Emmanuel hired me to be the publicist for the gym. And the first time I went down there to the Kronk boxing gym, it was such an eye-opener because it was 100 degrees. I mean, it was like a boiler room. I felt like I was in a sauna. He kept it extremely hot so guys could make weight easily. They got used to that heat, and it loosened up their muscles. It was really the way he trained them was to train. It was like that kind of yoga that they do that, what's it called? I don't do yoga, but there's a yoga that
Hot yoga
in the heat, you know? So he had the gym super, super hot. And, you know, I didn't know. I kind of walked in there, this, like you said, this white Jewish suburban mom, and I'm looking around, and I'm the only white person, certainly the only female. And they're all looking at me like, what's she doing here? And as I left there and got in my car, the first thing I noticed was a cockroach crawled out of my purse. And of course, I pulled over on the side of the road screaming because I'd never seen a cockroach. I didn't grow up in an environment where there were any. And I was like freaking out, but it had been so hot in the gym all the time and so moist because it was in the basement that there were cockroaches. And after a while, I got used to them. I would just flick them away. But the first time I saw one, I was horrified. And that was my indoctrination, you know, this little prissy, girly Jewish girl coming home with cockroaches in her purse. It was like, oh no, I'm not going to have that. But I got used to it. And I got used to the sounds of the heavy bags, of the speed bags. I got used to the smells. I got used to the whole rhythm of the gym. And it became like going to my office. And I started to feel more and more at home there. The guys were wonderful. The guys treated me like a big sister. Nobody really gave me a hard time. They were great. And I started to feel like the Kronk gym was home. And eventually I came to open and run my own boxing gym, which wasn't as hot. And we didn't have cockroaches. It was carpeted and it was very chic. But the point being is that you can get used to anything. And I did. And I loved it. And I would do it all again. It was just such a great experience. And I was a total fish out of water. I did not look the part. You know, I didn't dumb down or dress down. I went with my nails and my jewelry and my high heels and my designer clothes. I didn't try to fit in. I just went as who I am. And they accepted me and I learned to love them. And it was a strange little relationship I had with all these fighters, but it worked, and it's still working 45 years later.
Yeah, it's when you think about the story arc, I guess we can call it, from that start, those first couple times in the gym to now, over that 45-year period. It's amazing what you learn. But I want to mention, since you were talking about, I know you still have a good relationship with Tommy, and there was a picture you shared recently on social media, which I got a kick out of.
With
And
me
that
and my
was
dog and him?
Frankie, yes.
Yes. Tommy and I see each other all the time. He lives close to me. And, sometimes I'll just throw the dog in the car and we'll go over and hang out for a little while, or we'll go out to lunch, or I'll pick him up and go to a fight locally or whatever. We're like best friends, and we've been best friends since he was 19 years old. So it's, 45 years now, going on 46 years. And he's like the best friend that you could have. If I need something, he's there. And he knows if he needs something, all he has to just pick up the phone. He called the other day, his electric fence wasn't working. I said, Frankie and I are on our way. And I brought a contractor with me, and we went out there to see what he needed to fix the fence. If I have an event where I need him to show up, like tomorrow night, my friend's opening a restaurant. She said, I'd love Tommy to show up. Called Tommy. I said, meet me there at 6. We have that kind of a synergy and a connection. It's more like brother, sister at this point, because we've been together so long. And he's been at my kids' weddings. And, when I first met him, he was a kid. I was a young mom. Now I'm a grandmother, and he's a grandfather. And, we talk about our kids and we talk about our grandkids. And so much has gone on in all the years that we've been together, so many occasions, birthdays and, anniversaries and holidays and things like that. So I would say he's probably one of my best friends.
So what is that like, before I move forward to, like you said, it's been 45 years, going on 46. You guys have been around each other with births and deaths and anniversaries and weddings and grandkids, and just you guys share all these different life, milestones.
Correct.
So what is that like for you to be able to have somebody like Tommy and other folks as well sharing these different milestones with?
At the beginning, it took a little while for us to bond. I'm a white female from the suburbs. He's a black male from the inner city. Our backgrounds were very different. And, there's all the isms, the racism, the sexism, the ageism, all the different things that would divide people. But none of them divided us. Neither one of us care about ethnicities or age or none of that. We're both the kind of people that just love everybody that we love, and we don't care. So it was kind of an easy friendship right from the beginning, because, my being female didn't matter to him. Over the years, a lot of people would say, oh, are you two dating? Or, sometimes when we even go out now, someone will come up and say, oh, Mrs. Hearns, do you mind if I ask him for an autograph? And I go, I'm not Mrs. Hearns, but you ask him, And Tommy will tell everybody, we're just best friends. We're platonically best friends. A lot of people don't understand that a man and a woman, black and white, young and old. I mean, Tommy's 65. I'm going to be 78. We have a lot of, differences, in our lives, but none of them matter, because our friendship is so strong that none of that has any effect on our closeness. We're there for each other. And I feel that way. If James needs something, Bronco McKart and I are still very close. Scotty Buck, one of my fighters, I was just in Florida, got together with Pinklin Thomas, who I used to manage. I see Tom Boom Boom Johnson, who I used to manage. I stay in touch with all my fighters because they were all my children. They were all part of my life. And I don't burn a bridge. That's one of the things I live by. If you're important enough to be in my life, you're always going to be in my life. And I don't have any grudges that I hold against anyone. Thank God I've never been sued. I've never been to arbitration with a fighter. I just like to keep peace and harmony in my life. And it's very important to me that I stay on good terms with anybody I've ever worked with. And it's worked so far, and I'm going to keep it like that. And so all my old fighters are still in my family. So every once in a while I'll have a reunion, and all the ones that are here in Detroit, will come and we'll either have a big barbecue, we'll go to a park, or if it's in the winter, we'll go to a restaurant. And there's that camaraderie that we formed over the years. And it's a beautiful thing. I mean, right now, the fighters that I'm managing are younger than my own grandchildren. That's how long I've been in this. When I started out, the fighters were close to, not that much younger than me. Then the fighters were my kids' age. My two boys became really close to James Toney. They were all the same age. Now the fighters are even younger than my grandkids. So I've been through 3 different generations of fighters, and I still have the same passion for the sport. I still love my fighters. They're all my family. And I don't know that the male managers could say the same thing, because I think they have a different relationship. It's more of a business, whereas for me, it's more family. So I think that's the difference between a female manager and a male manager, at least in my case.
And with what you were saying there is kind of set me off in a different direction quickly. And how come you mentioned about the different generations and you still had that fire in your gut? What is it that still keeps that fire in your belly there to still have the passion to do what you do?
There's nothing like taking a young fighter and molding him, making all the right decisions, picking all the right fights, and getting him to a world title and standing there when they put that belt around his waist and he looks at you and you look at him and say, we did it. There's nothing like it. It's such a gratifying situation, and the feeling of knowing that you changed somebody's life is just incredible. My fighter now, Mike Quan Williams, who is 22-0 with 2 draws, he just won a WBA America's title a couple of weeks ago. And just to see him, he's 20 some odd years old, and my grandson's older than him. But like I said, to see him win that title and know that he's now getting up in the ratings and, we're going to shoot for a world title. I still get the same thrill that I got when James won his title. There's still that idol maker feeling of saying, I took this raw clay and I molded it into a world champion. It's a great feeling. And knowing that, like I said, that I've made a profound difference in somebody's life. You can't put a dollar sign on that. It's more gratifying than any amount of money that you could make. It's the satisfaction of knowing that you accomplished something really big. And I still have that passion. I still want to take every young kid that comes to me with a passion for fighting, who has that hunger. And if he has the 3 ingredients that I look for, I'm ready to sign him and move forward. But they have to all be there, all 3. And he has to have innate talent. He has to actually be a born fighter. If he doesn't have that born natural talent, you can't teach it. He has to be a disciplined guy that trains perfectly, first in the gym, last to leave the gym, doesn't drink or do drugs. He has to be disciplined. And then he has to have heart, because you can't teach that. You can have a great fighter and he might be the most disciplined guy ever. But if he doesn't have heart, you got to be willing to go balls to the wall in that ring. And when I find someone that's got all 3, it's like, let's go. Let's get it on and let's go for that title.
Well, you just beat me to the punch, because that was going to be one of my next questions as far as a manager side of things, of what you look for in a fighter. But so I'll put it this way, in terms of, there's 3 things that you look for with your fighters that you bring into your camp per se. But how do you know these guys or girls have what you're looking for?
That's a really good question, because you don't always know. I've signed fighters that I was sure had the whole package and they were going to definitely go all the way. And something along the way, either an injury, an attitude that I just couldn't put up with, or bad habits. They'd be late to the gym, or some days they wouldn't come in. I'd check them in the morning, see if they were running, they were still sleeping, stuff like that. And I just said, you don't have it. It's not going to happen. So sometimes the ones you think are going to be great aren't. And then I've had kids that came to the gym that I thought are marginal. I don't know how far they're going to go. And they've surprised me and gone a lot farther than I thought they would go. And a lot of it's psychological. I'll get a fighter who has no confidence. Oh, I don't know if I could beat this guy. And he's tall, he's a southpaw, and I don't know. And I have to convince him of how good he actually is because he has that insecurity. And then I get the guy who says, I could fight for a title tomorrow. He thinks he's all that. And I have to say, hey, buddy, hold it. You're good, but you're not that good. And I'm not going to risk it. And I'm not going to put you in over your head just because you think you're ready. I know you're not. So it's that psychological connection that I have to have with the guy where I can talk him up or down based on what he needs. And that comes from a background of psychology where at one time I wanted to be a therapist. So I did a lot of studying. And that helps me a lot in understanding the different personalities of the fighters I work with so that I can try to get in their heads and work with their strengths and their weaknesses. And it's been a real gift because, I've been able to talk a lot of guys and girls into believing in themselves and going that extra mile.
Now, when you bring on a fighter as a manager, and I'm just learning the boxing game in I'd say in the past couple of years, really doing deep dives. And obviously I know the legends, your Larry Holmes, your Ali's, your Tyson's, et cetera, Mayweather's down the line. But when you sign a manager agreement with a fighter, is it a fight to fight agreement? How does the business side structure look like?
Well, that's different with every manager, I'm sure. I sign like a 3 to 5 year contract and I guarantee a certain number of fights a year. And then I hook up with the promoter who will work together. Because for me, it's a 4-lane highway, 4 lanes. The fighter is here. He's training and fighting. That's his lane. His trainer's over here. He stays in his lane and trains the fighter and they go straight ahead. I'm the manager. I'm in this lane. I stay in this lane. I don't cross over to the trainers. There's going to be an accident. Here's the promoter. Promoter's doing his thing, promoting. If he promotes and I manage and he trains and he fights, it's smooth sailing. We'll go right where we're going. If we start crossing over, there's accidents. So I always find fighters that don't try to manage. I find promoters that don't try to train. And I try to keep everybody in their own lane and it's a smooth ride. It's hard because sometimes you'll have people that do try to cross over, tell the other one what to do. And it's kind of up to me to keep them all straight and not get tangled up. You're the promoter. Please don't tell the trainer how to train him. Yeah, he needs to sit down more on his punches. I get that. He has to work on his footwork. Tell me, I'll tell the trainer, but don't you cross over into his lane. And if I keep everybody straight, it's perfect. So, I'm kind of the traffic cop that keeps everyone in their lanes. And it seems to work. And it's easier for me that way. I kind of do what I think makes sense because I'm always happy. I'm always in a good mood. I don't want stress in my life at this age. And I just want happiness. I want my fighters to be happy. I want the trainers to feel rewarded for the work they do. And I want everybody that I come in contact with to feel better for getting to know me and work with me. I don't want anybody saying, oh, wow, she was a handful, or I don't know how I'm going to work with her again. I don't need that. I don't want that. I'm just easygoing.
And I get the vibe of that from the little bit we've spent talking, setting us up, all that fun stuff. I definitely get that vibe. That's that Northeast gut instinct I like to have. I want to go back to James for a minute there. And I'm sorry for bouncing all around here. But
oh, that's good. I like that.
There was a year, and I don't remember what year it was when doing my homework, because we know everything online is true. But there was a year that James did like 10 fights within a year, which just seems mind-boggling. Because
can't do it today. You couldn't do it today. Impossible. But that was like 91. And, we had monthly fights here in Detroit. And they were on USA. So I was tight with the promoter. He built James. He built Bronco McKart. He worked with all my fighters. And so I put James on every card. And USA built him. People got to know him at home. You don't have that anymore. There's no more free TV for boxing. You don't even have cable anymore. No Showtime, no HBO. All you have is streaming like DAZN and Pro Box and Fight. So if you don't subscribe to one of them, you don't watch boxing and you don't know who's who. And the big fights are all pay-per-view. And you don't build fighters the way we used to build fighters. Now everything's social media. It's a very different business, extremely different. So the way I brought up James fought for his world title in 2.5 years.
Unprecedented with that.
Can't do it anymore. That was
And
30 years ago. Yeah, 35 years ago.
and it's funny. You're not the first person to tell me that, because Lee Rose has told me that. Brian Young has obviously told me that. I'm just saying that, when all these people who know the game have said the same thing with the structure of cable, like you said, where USA used to have fights, ESPN had the Friday night fights, you had Showtime, you had HBO, you had, all these different, but now it's streaming. So has that helped or hurt the sport of boxing?
That's the age-old question. It's like people ask me all the time about Jake and Logan Paul. Has that helped boxing or hurt boxing? And so those are the questions.
That was one of my questions, but go ahead.
Yeah, and so people ask me that. Basically, I think it's helped because it's got a lot of people watching boxing that didn't watch it before. So you can get, I would say, if I had a guy coming out of the amateurs, 200 fights, 180 and 20, great record. He's won all kinds of Golden Gloves, PAL tournaments. Nobody cares about him. No one's going to watch him. Jake Paul, he's got millions of followers. He can do pay-per-view and make millions of dollars. So he's, I think, brought a new life to the sport. Now, if you're a purist and you feel that the boxers should pay their dues, they should go through the amateurs, all of that, then obviously he doesn't fit that mold. But is he bringing attention to it? You have to, because we're competing now with MMA. We didn't have MMA, till 20 years ago. So we didn't really have to worry about UFC. And, now we have UFC, we have the WWE, which has its audience. We have bare knuckle fighting. We have celebrity boxing. There's a lot of different choices that the viewer has. So if Jake Paul is bringing people to watch boxing, I give him credit for that. Plus, he's building a good team. He's got a gym down in Florida. I think he's good for the sport.
And I was thinking of Kenny Bayless. I don't know how I forgot that, but love Kenny. Kenny's he's a mensch, as they would say in Yiddish.
Great guy. The best. Yeah, he's a wonderful man.
But going back to James, because I was, like I said, we're bouncing all around here, folks. It's funny that there was a rumor that went around, and I'm curious to know about it because, like I said, I'm still learning the game and the politics and all that fun stuff. But there was apparently rumors that your business relationship was considered controversial. Why was that?
My
James
business relationship
with James.
Relationship with James. Yeah. I think what was controversial about it was after the Roy Jones fight, when he lost, he was very upset. It was his first loss. He was young. He did not know how to take it. And he kind of imploded for a little while. And he was very angry at everybody, including me. And it blew over. But the media just jumped on that, and thought, oh, my gosh, look at that. He hates his manager. It got blown way, way, way out of proportion. And we still continued to work together for another year after that. And then when his contract was up, he chose to go with someone else. It was hard. I was heartbroken because he was like a son to me, and I was very hurt. But he felt that was his best move for himself, and I just had to wish him luck. And like you would any kid that leaves to go to college or get married or move out, I had to just suck it up and say, I wish you the best, and I hope it's the right decision for you. And it hurt, but it taught me a good lesson. And then I realized that fighters come and go in your life, and they may stay for their whole career. They may not. And that's the nature of the sport. So it toughened me, and it taught me a good lesson. And I learned from it. So anything that goes wrong, any failure in your life is a lesson. And if you look at it as a lesson, it's not really a failure. It's just another stepping stone.
Exactly. You mentioned it earlier, but how do you go about picking and choosing the fights that fit your fighters at that particular time in their career?
Well, it used to be really hard because we didn't have box rec and we didn't have ways to check records. Like today, I can look up a fighter and I can not only know his record, his win-loss record, I can look up every fighter he fought and then every fighter that that person fought. So I can really handicap a fight like I would a race, a horse race. I can look at who they fought, how many rounds they went, who knocked out who. If my guy fought a guy that's a common opponent and my fighter knocked that guy out in the first round, but the other guy that we're fighting went the distance with him, then I know that probably my fighter's better than the guy we're fighting. Because if he had to struggle with the same guy that my kid knocked out, that's a good sign. And conversely, if I see a guy that my fighter struggled to get a unanimous decision with, but the guy we're fighting knocked him out, then I have to look at that and say, hey, let's look at some of these things. So I handicap the fights. I look at who they fought. I look at when's the last fight they had. If my kid just fought and he's sharp, that's a point in my favor. If the other guy hasn't fought in a year or year and a half, another point in my guy's favor. Are we fighting in our hometown or his hometown? Or are we fighting in neutral ground? Is he with the promoter of the fight? Is he signed to that promoter? Are we the B side or the A side? These are all factors that determine the odds of whether your fighter, has a better chance to win or lose. So I factor in a lot of different things when I make the decision. Is this the right fighter at the right time? Records don't mean anything like they used to because guys will fight a lot of average fighters to build a record. So if they say to me, I got a guy for you 20-0, a lot of managers go, oh, I don't want a guy undefeated. No. And then they give you a guy 17-3. Well, a lot of managers will say, oh, give me the 17-3 guy, not the 20-0 guy. But if I look at the guy that's 20-0 and he fought nobodies, but the guy 17-3, his 3 losses were to top 10 fighters and he went the distance and lost the decision, I don't want him. He's got a lot more experience with better fighters. I want to take the 20-0 guy that fought nobody. So you have to know what you're doing. You have to really handicap and look at every fight from all different sides. Again, it's where the fight is, who's connected to who are the judges, are they neutral judges? There's so many factors. So you have to do your homework, and a good manager does their homework.
With all that being said, and it's funny, I was just texting Brian about the cigars quickly, and I won't say he lost bets on the cigars and James's cigar company, but we won't go there. But he got a laugh that I told him you brought that up. But with what you were just saying, would you consider yourself a purist when it comes to the fight game?
I think so, yeah. I am, because I came up back in the early days of the 70s when there were still, the Muhammad Ali's and the Larry Holmes and all the really good fighters. I came up during the era of the Four Kings, the Herbs, Leonard, Hagler, Duran era. I came up during the Mike Tyson and Vander Holyfield years. So I think that I was exposed to some really, really legendary, iconic fighters. And then it makes it a little different today for me to see some of the fighters that people think are so great. When I look at them compared to the early fighters, the Sugar Ray Robinsons and the Rocky Marcianos and the Rocky Grazianos and, the Ezzard Charles. And I became kind of a student of the sport and started watching fight tapes many years ago before there were YouTube videos. You had to actually get a VHS tape and put it in and watch it. And
or a reel to reel.
Reel to reel was even, the earlier fights that I saw. So I guess I'm a purist in the sense that I look for that old style throwback fight as far as, I know what a really good fighter is. So I kind of look for that. So I'd say I'm a purist in that respect.
Well, curious to know, when we advanced and all that fun stuff, you had involvement with the Contender, Stallone and Mark Burnett and all that. So was that something that was good or bad for the sport at the time? And even now, looking back, hindsight 2020.
I think it was good for the sport in the sense that it it got some mainstream people at home that watched it because of Stallone and, we're big Rocky fans. The fighters they picked, there were 16 of them. There's still 14 of them alive. We lost 2 of them. I stay in touch with a lot of them. We just did a reunion show last weekend with 7 of them and myself. And it put a spotlight on the sport. It was supposedly going to find the next big world champion. None of them really came out of there as superstars the way they thought that it would have been. And then the seasons after that weren't on NBC. They were on ESPN and different networks, until it finally faded away. But I'd like to see it come back, maybe even as a female version. I love the idea of a competition. I love the idea of the camaraderie of the guys that all live together and the relationships they formed. They're all still really good friends. The 14 of them that are left, different ones stay in touch with each other. And it was a wonderful experience for me. I had known both Ray Leonard and Stallone for probably 20 years before we did the show. So there was that familiarity going into the show. And we all had the same dressing room, the 3 of us. So every day we go into the dressing room and wait for our times to go on. And so there were so many days of just talking about stories. Ray had so many stories. And of course, Stallone, he's such an amazing man. He writes, he produces, he directs, he acts. He's incredible and the nicest guy you'd ever want to get to know. I can't say enough about him. He's just so great. But spending that amount of time with 2 legends like that was a gift. I would do it again in a heartbeat. It was so wonderful. And I love those 2 guys so much. And it was just a real privilege to be able to be with them every day for a couple of months. I mean, it was a great gift. I'll never forget that.
Nice to hear. I always want to connect with Stallone, even just as a fan.
Oh, he's the best guy you'll ever meet.
Yeah,
really.
Even just as a fan, it'd be great to say hello and whatnot, because I've heard.
And he is wonderful to his fans. A girlfriend of mine was at a drugstore the other day down in Florida, and she ran into him and went over to him and said, "Hey, I'm a friend of Jackie's." And he went, "Oh, how are you? And how's she doing?" And he was so nice to her. She said, "I couldn't believe that I'm standing there talking to Rocky, and then the next minute it's like, oh my God, it's Rambo." You see him and you see these iconic roles that he played flash before your eyes. And I mean, he's just an amazing man. I can't say enough about him. And his brother Frank's a pretty great guy too. They're just wonderful guys.
Frank could sing. I'll put that out there.
He can sing. He can play guitar. He is an excellent hunter and he's an excellent marksman. He's very talented in a lot of ways. And I was friends with their mom, Jackie, and she was a character too. I loved her. And they're just great people. And to get to know them adds to your life. They're the kind of people that you want to get to know. They're exceptional. The Stallones are really great.
And especially because I'm from the Philadelphia area, Rocky is obviously, considered a god. And I've heard stories of Sly telling stories that whenever he's in the area, and they just recently did a Rocky Day in December.
I saw that. Yeah.
He chuckles that when he's in town or in the area, people don't see Sly Stallone. It's, "Hey, you Rock." Hey, and they think of the character, obviously. It's.
Well, yeah. And they even talk to him like that. "Yo, Rocky."
Yeah, exactly.
"How's Adrian?" They get right away into that mold. And that's who he is. Look at the statue they put up of him in Philadelphia. People run up and down those steps. It's so iconic. So yeah, he's made his mark on the world in a way that few people do. I mean, you could drop him in the middle of a jungle somewhere and they're going to know who he is.
"Hey, Rambo, how you doing, buddy?"
Exactly. I mean, he's known all over the world. He's like Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson. Those are faces that are universally recognized, which is pretty amazing to be that iconic.
I'd like to explain something. I ain't punchy. I got what you call, a relaxed brain, but I ain't punchy, It's just the way I talk here.
Well, speaking of recognition, they did a little movie in 2004 called Against the Ropes, which was a fictional story based on your story. So what was that like? But
Inspired
also,
by. It was
yeah,
inspired by. It wasn't based on, because if it was based on, it would have been more factual.
yes,
But
they did the Hollywood thing.
nevertheless, yeah, they did. They did.
But what was that like to have that take the inspiration to make a fictional story based on what you did, but also have Meg Ryan play yourself?
I think what I got out of that the most was I've had so many young girls and young people in the last 20 years come up to me and say, can you give me some advice? How can I make it? I want to be a welder. I want to be, a cement mixer or whatever different fields that they want to go into. And I tell them to go for it. You don't have to listen to other people tell you you cannot do something. If you believe you can do it, I always say, if you believe it, you can achieve it. And so I encourage a lot of people, and I think the movie showed that you can be a total fish out of water. You can be a total anomaly in the field that you choose. But if you believe in yourself and you want it bad enough, you're going to get it, and you can get it. And another important lesson that I've learned in life is there's a ladder that you climb to get to the top. And you cannot pull that ladder up with you when you get up there so that no one else can climb up there. You want to be the king of the mountain and you don't want anyone else up there. That is so wrong. You have to leave that ladder there, and you got to reach down behind you and put your hand out there and help the other people that are climbing up behind you. Because I didn't have anybody ahead of me. There was no female managers when I started. I didn't have anybody that I could talk to, that I could say, well, how did you handle this? And what did you do in this situation? Because there was nobody. I had a glass ceiling that I had to break through myself, and I had a path that had never been walked before. And I had to walk that path and hit the bumps in the road and the weeds in the garden and all that. So I want to be there for other people who are going through that same kind of a situation. And I want to help them through that because I've been there. And so if I can clear the path for someone else, I feel that's my responsibility. So I learned a lot. The movie taught me that if you inspire people and motivate people, then you have to be there to help those people. And you have to be willing to answer every text, every email. You just have to be available and approachable. And I've tried to be that for all these years. And I'm so grateful for all the people that have reached out that I have been able to mentor and to be able to assist, give them a name. Oh, you looking for a gym in your area? Let me tell you who to call. Oh, you're looking for a trainer? How about you call this one or that one? I mean, it's an honor to me to be able to reach out a helping hand to somebody else. And I hope the movie did inspire a lot of people to walk a path that's never been walked before. That's what they're there for. They're waiting for that explorer to come along and clear the weeds and make a path. And so I hope the movie did motivate people and inspire people.
Is there still sexism within the sport of boxing and such?
There's all the isms. There's sexism, racism, ageism, all the isms are still in life. You're going to find them in every walk of life. Certain jobs aren't going to hire you if you're over a certain age. Certain businesses want strictly males or females. I have guys that wanted to be hairdressers, let's say, and they had a rough time because it was mostly women. And they'd say, well, you're not gay, so why do you want to be a hairdresser? I mean, there's stereotypes. There's people that expect everybody in this particular profession to look a certain way, to be a certain age, a certain gender, a certain whatever. And the isms are just there. They're always going to be there. I was told a million times starting out to be a ring card girl. They said, that's what you're suited for. Go get a bikini and be a ring card girl. Well, I didn't want to be a ring card girl. That wasn't my goal. If I wanted to be a ring card girl, great, I would have. But that wasn't my goal. But people minimize you. If you look a certain way, you're blonde, you're petite, and so obviously you fit into this role. You don't know anything because you're a blonde bimbo, right? You don't know anything. So you had to prove, I did anyways, that I knew what I was talking about because I didn't look like a Don King. I didn't look like I fit in this business. And people still went by stereotypes. But I tried to show people that there is no stereotype. You can look how you look and still know a lot about your field. you don't have to look the part. And if I could have broken through a barrier in that respect, then I'm very happy I did, because I wasn't going to change how I looked to fit the role. I wanted the role to accept me for how I was. And that took some work, but I did it.
And what you were just saying a minute ago about the ladder, it made me think of a quote that somebody told me long ago, in that the same people you see going up that ladder are going to be the same people on the other side of that ladder.
100%. Yeah, I was just going to say, and that's why my theory of don't burn any bridges is so true. I've worked with people that gave me a hard time, and I didn't hold it against them. Excuse me. I didn't have a grudge. I said, I'm going to work with you somewhere down the line. Sorry, it's not right now. But we may someday end up working together. So let's stay on good terms. And even people that were not kind to me or that cut me down or underestimated me, I smiled and said, that's okay. I'll be back and maybe we can work together. Never burned a bridge, because you never know. Like you say, I'm going to meet the same people coming and going. So I don't want to have bad feelings and then have to try to make up. I'd rather always just be on a good term. And then if we can work together again, we will.
You just mentioned Don King, and obviously there are tons of stories out there about the man. What kind of dealings did you have with him?
Oh, I dealt with him from the very beginnings of my career. You know, we always crossed paths, or, you know, Emmanuel would be working with him, or, you know, different fighters that I'd work with would be on his cards, whatever. I'm very close to Christy Martin, and she fought for him on all the cards with Tyson. And, you know, he was always pretty much very respectful to me. We had a couple of instances where he tried to undermine me or tried to, you know, pull the race card, like, well, why do you want to work with a white woman? And, you know, my fighters were pretty loyal, and they said, hey, I'm happy with her, but thank you. And he respected that. And I like the guy. I've always liked Don. And I had nothing but good relations with him. But I choose to have that with everybody. I don't want bad blood. I don't want to say anything negative about anybody, because the minute you say something bad, it's going to get back to that person, and then they're going to have a hard on against you. And oh my gosh, it's just not worth it. And I just try my hardest to always have something positive to say. And, you know, if somebody's done something really egregious and really bad, I'm not going to protect them and say, oh, they're great. You know, if you ask me, I'll tell you, watch out, watch your back. But I'm not going to smear anybody or go out of my way to hurt someone's reputation. It's just not who I am.
Yeah, and that's been my goal in 11 years of doing this. And yeah, there are stories about people and all that stuff, and the dirt, as people would like to go for. But why? What's that going to accomplish? A few more clicks?
You're right. You know, you're right. And if you can see the bright side of everything, and if you can find the good in everybody, it's there. I mean, if you go out looking for someone to be an asshole or a jerk, you'll find it, because a lot of times they are.
You're looking at one right here, but
oh, stop. I don't believe that. But I tend to look at everybody in a good light. And until they show me otherwise, I only see the good. Now, if you show me a bad side, you know, that's on you. And then I might change my opinion. But as long as someone's nice to me, I don't care if someone tells me so-and-so's this and that. Unless I see it for myself, I'll form my own opinion. I don't let anyone else's words affect me at all. And that's why I was able to survive in this business for so long. Because when people told me, oh, you can't do this, or you can't do that, or you don't fit in, I just said, okay, thank you for your opinion, and I respect that. And then I went about my business and did what I was going to do. I don't let the outside voices affect me. I've never been someone that was out there seeking approval, like, oh, I want everybody to like me. If you like me, great, that's wonderful. And if you don't, that's okay. Nobody's liked by everybody. And we all make mistakes in life, and I'm human. But I don't go out of my way to look for something bad in someone, and nor do I go out of my way to seek approval. I think water seeks its own level. Good people find each other. And I've been so blessed in my life and in my career that I've worked with so many wonderful people. I mean, the people that I work with, even now, the Lou DeBellas and the Dimitri Salidas and the Carlos Linases and the Bobby Hitzes and, the Golden Boys and Bob Arum and all the people that I deal with are just great to me. And maybe it's because I've outlasted so many people and, I'm an OG now and, I've stood the test of time. But I think when you give people respect, you get it back for the most part.
And yeah, I was joking there about myself. Unless you give me a reason to be that asshole or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And like you said, if you don't like me, great. If you do, even better. My joke I always tell is that when I'm long gone from here, I'm going to be buried upside down, and that way those people can kiss my arse. But
there you go. But you know what? You can't please everybody.
Exactly.
And sometimes, no matter how nice you are, there's always going to be someone that's a hater. And they don't like you because you're nice and because you're successful and because you're down to earth and don't have an attitude. They'll still find a reason to dislike you. So I don't worry about those people. They're not even on my Richter scale. They don't even register. They're there, but they're not important in my life.
Exactly. Final two. Favorite fighter of all time. Favorite fight movie.
Oh, favorite fighter of all time. I love Joe Louis, being from Detroit. My grandmother was his teacher. And so I have a special place in my heart for Joe Louis. James Toney is one of my favorite fighters, and Tommy Hearns. I got to put those three in my favorite category. My favorite boxing movie, I've seen them all so many times. I'd say Raging Bull. I loved Raging Bull. I thought that was just excellent. The acting, the writing, everything about it. What's yours? Well, who's your favorite fighter, and what's your favorite boxing movie?
Well, I obviously respect the greats, but I'd say favorite fighter, and because he has local ties, is Bernard Hopkins. He's a Philly boy.
And he's an excellent man and an excellent fighter. So that's a good choice.
Movie, I gotta go, obviously, Rocky, that series. But I got a kick out of, and obviously I would think there was a lot of tongue-in-cheek in it, was Grudge Match.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. But still, I mean, and I love the Rocky movies. Obviously, I've seen
Except
them all.
for 5. No, I tease. People shit on 5 all the time.
I like
6.
I liked them all. I'm not as big a fan of Creed as I was of Rocky because of the way they left him out and all that, but that's just a personal thing. But Raging Bull, Robert De Niro was so incredible. And because I knew Jake LaMotta so well, and he was like an uncle, and I felt so close to him, the movie was just an eye-opener. Because by the time I met him, he was older and mellower. But to see how he used to be was like, oh my gosh. So, yeah, I mean, I loved Raging Bull.
Well, we're talking on the 29th of January, and this will be out in a day or two. But does any of your talent have anything coming up fight-wise?
Oh, I'm waiting for Mike Kwan, who just won, to have a fight coming up, hopefully in April. And then I want him to fight again in June at the Hall of Fame weekend. If that works out, that would be an honor for me to have him fight that weekend. I get my induction. And then I have a fighter here, Sam Rizzo, and he's fighting in March. He's a 130 pounder. So they're both coming up. And then I got a call today from the city of Detroit, and there's talk about having a street naming for me. And I mean, I was like overwhelmed. They have a street named after me in my city. It's like, oh my gosh. So they're putting a proposal together for the city council. And I mean, that would be just the biggest honor. So, every day is a new hurdle, a new challenge, a new accomplishment. And whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, I welcome every day. I mean, when you get up in the years that I'm at, in the higher 70s, you never know. Nobody knows what tomorrow brings. You could be 30 and get hit by a car. But I cherish every day more. I seem the older I get, the more I value the time with my kids and grandkids and my fighters. And, every day is a gift to me. Maybe that's why they call it the present, because it is a present. But I'm just trying to enjoy my life and change the lives of the people around me every which way that I can, and just be a happy camper. And like I said, getting in the Hall of Fame is a great honor. And to do these podcasts, to be able to talk to someone like you and spread the message of positivity and believing in yourself and going for whatever goal you set for yourself. I love doing that because I think people need to hear that. You have to know that a positive attitude is going to get you a lot further than bitching, complaining, and being down on yourself. None of that works. You can't get light out of darkness. So you have to have positive vibes to get positive results.
Absolutely. And congratulations on the Hall of Fame. Brian's
Thank
trying
you.
to talk Brian's trying to talk me into coming up, which it's not much of a twist of the arm.
Well, how far is it from Philadelphia to Canastota? It's not that far.
Well, if I remember correctly, he told me that's near Syracuse, correct?
Yes, it's right by Syracuse. Yep.
So it's probably about 4.5, 5 hours.
That's nothing. I think you should come. I think it's going to be a great weekend. I think have you ever been to Canastota for any of these?
Never.
Well, this would be the one to come to, because then you could see me get inducted. And I want as many people there as possible. I want it to be a weekend that I'm sure it's going to be a weekend I'll never forget. But so many people say, I want to be there and I'm going to meet you. And I say, you better be, because I'm writing down all the people that say they're going to be there. So hopefully you'll get your little butt there and we can have breakfast or something.
Yeah, well, put me on that list. I'm definitely interested. Jackie, thank you so much.
Such a pleasure. You asked great questions and it was really, really fun. So anytime you run out of guests, call me up.
I got you. Hey there, Friday fans. We know how much you enjoy the movies. Enjoy grabbing your Friday merchandise and interacting with the Friday family, whether it be at conventions or during our particular watch-alongs. Well, when you're looking to get yourself masks, why not check out our friends over at Camp Blood Customs out of New York State and order your specific custom mask from any of the films. All orders are made specifically. Your needs and wants are. Make sure you find Camp Blood Customs on Facebook, Instagram, and all over social media and order yours today.
Hey guys, I'm Kenny Bayless, and hey, listen to Crazy Dream Radio. It's one of the best podcasts that I know of, and I've done many. Listen to them.